Romance of Sui and Tang Dynasties, Chapter 56.
And the chaos after the Sui dynasty collapsed. Around 618 CE, stability was, well, it was a myth. You had this fractured landscape where our sources say 2 or 3 dozen local kings and warlords popped up. Most of them were just driven by, raw ambition and survival. But the emerging Tang forces, they weren't interested in just surviving. They were aiming for the ultimate prize, consolidating all of China.
I mean, the stakes were life or death, not just for the commanders, but for the whole direction of Chinese history. The source material kicks off with this ancient military principle that just defined the era. Arrogance leads to defeat.
That sets the scene perfectly. Critical, high-stakes maneuver by the Tang, specifically by the Prince of Qin, Li Shimin, and his brilliant strategist, Zhu Mogong. They're leaving the capital, Shangnan, with this grand plan to go confront a massive rival up north, Lu Wuzhu.
But what stands out immediately is the tension. The tension between achieving these grand political goals and dealing with the fundamentally base and sometimes just monstrous nature of the men they had to fight, and critically, the men they had to use. So the moment the main Tang army marched north, they immediately faced this huge existential threat from the rear.
Wang Shichong.
Wang Shichong.
Yeah.
He had just committed regicide, killed the Sui puppet emperor, and seized the throne of Zheng. He's right there.
And that risk assessment, it seems incredibly cold-blooded. If Wang Shichong moves west and attacks the capital while the main army is committed way up north, the whole consolidation effort just collapses.
It's over, yeah. So Ma Gong's advice to the Prince of Qin was that, look, rescue would be impossible. They needed to neutralize Wang Shichong without actually fighting him directly.
And can't spare the truth.
Exactly. The strategy demanded using an unstable third party, another warlord, as a distraction, as a shield, really. It was a purely cynical solution, just designed to let 2 rivals bleed each other dry.
And the warlord they picked for this was Zhu Kan, the self-proclaimed king of Chu. He's stationed at Jutuan, and, our sources note he had recently defected to the Tang, so technically he's an ally, but a wildly precarious one.
And that precariousness was strategic. Ma Gong proposes sending an envoy to Zhu Kan, not just with a regular alliance offer, but proposing a joint attack on the regicide, Wang Shichong. The lure, though, had to be completely irresistible for a man of his character.
And the bribe was immense. The Tang promised Zhu Kan he could take all of Wang Shichong's treasure, all the valuables, precious jade. Plus, any land and people taken from Zheng, that's Wang Shichong's territory, would be shared by Tang and Chu. The source is so clear about this guy, it calls him a greedy and vulgar man. The original text is Tan Bei Zivu, it just highlights his absolute base nature.
It's the perfect payoff for raw greed. But this is the point where the whole strategic calculation almost breaks down over a moral objection. The Prince of Qin, Li Shimin, he immediately pushes back on the plan. And he objects not because of the political risk, but because of Zhu Kan's horrifying, well-documented reputation.
He didn't mince words at all. The prince says flat out, "This thief likes to eat people." And this wasn't, a rumor. The prince recounts a specific grotesque atrocity. Zhu Kan once hosted 2 named Sui officials, the scholar Lu Kangbian and attendant Yan Minshu. And then, in this just terrifying display of power, he ate their entire families. How do you justify aligning with a sociopath of that caliber?
You don't. Morally, you can't. But you justify it strategically. Ma Gong offers the cold, hard logic for why this monster is the perfect tool for the job. He presented it as a win-win no matter what Zhu Kan decided to do.
Okay, so what were the 2 wins?
Win number 1. If Zhu Kan agrees, the Tang sends a tiny force, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 troops, just to give the Nkak some political cover. And this lets Chu and Zheng trample each other. It achieves that famous maneuver, the fisherman's advantage.
Where you wait for 2 rivals to exhaust themselves.
Exactly. Then the Tang can swoop in later.
And the second win, the backup plan, is even more ruthless.
If Zhu Kan refuses the alliance, Tang will just immediately outlack him instead. This action forces Wang Shichong to worry about his southern border, which completely neutralizes his ability to move west against the capital. Either way, the threat to Chang is gone. The main army can proceed north.
It's a perfect example of, sacrificing short-term ethics for long-term survival. So what's the overall name for this brutal 2-step stratagem?
This is the classic fake you destroys Guo plan. It's one of the 36 stratagems. You temporarily use an ally, in this case the state of Yu, to defeat a third party, Guo. And once that bigger threat is gone, the temporary ally, who is now weak or isolated, is eliminated immediately afterward. Zhu Kan was, from the very beginning, a disposable pawn meant only to buy time.
So to pull this off, they needed a brave or maybe a foolish envoy. A scholar named Duan Ke volunteers. He says he had an old acquaintance with Zhu Can from when they were minor officials together.
But the Prince of Qin hesitates again, and strangely, not because of the cannibalism danger, it's because Guan Ke had a known catastrophic character flaw. He was a heavy drinker. It seems almost impossible that a maneuver this massive could hinge on a single vice.
It does. But Duan Ke, he knows the stakes, and he makes this solemn promise. He says, I have already quit drinking. The prince accepts it, and off Duan Ke goes. He gets there, he successfully conveys the offer of vast wealth, territory, Tang support.
And Zhu Can, predictably, he's just easily swayed by the good intentions, and especially the promise of all that treasure. The business is settled right there. He agrees. He just needs a small Tang contingent.
And that's where it all starts to go wrong. The official business is done. So Zhu Can immediately calls for wine. He tells Duan Ke, if we talk business, I've obeyed your command. If we talk friendship, we must drink.
The source material really drives home the vice here. It describes how people who are greedy for drink, they're moved just by the sight of it, and Duan Ke completely forgets his solemn promise. He lifts the cup and starts drinking heavily with his host. They're laughing, drinking, totally intoxicated.
And while he's completely drunk, Duan Ke makes a truly catastrophic mistake. He starts taunting his host. In front of the whole court, he asks Zhu Can directly if he still eats people. He calls the warlord out on his greatest secret, publicly.
Oof, that moment. It must have been terrifyingly silent. Zhu Can is instantly enraged that his shortcoming is exposed, but he manages to control it just for a beat and delivers what is probably the most chilling quote in all our sources for this.
What does he say?
Zhu Can replies, with this terrifying calm, I now only like to eat scholars. Their flesh is delicate and the taste is different. Eating a drunken man is like eating pickled pork.
And Duan Ke, still drunk and defiant, he argues back. He calls it nonsense. He escalates it from a taunt into a full-blown dispute in front of the warlord's guards.
And that was the final straw. Zhu Can just explodes in rage. He orders his guards, quickly kill the scholar Duan Ke and steam him to accompany my wine.
Okay, hold on. We have to stop there for a second.
Yeah,
Steam in to
forgot.
accompany my wine.
That
detail. It really grounds the sheer sociopathic brutality of this era. A named, scholarly figure killed and cannibalized just because of a drunken taunt and a broken promise. The diplomatic mission was a spectacular, horrifying failure.
It was a complete disaster. A surviving soldier manages to escape and informs the Prince of Qin, who is justifiably enraged. Our sources say the prince was so consumed by fury, by the need for immediate personal vengeance, that he prepared to personally lead the main army to Jutuan to settle this score. He was ready to abandon the entire grand strategic campaign against Lu Wuzhu.
But this is where the genius of grand strategy reasserts itself, and it's bolstered by some timely luck. Just as the prince is consumed by this emotional outburst, two critical pieces of information arrive, and they change the entire military calculus.
Right. First, General Li Jing returns from a separate campaign. Second, another warlord, Zhang Shangxiang, defects to the Tang, and he brings 2,000 or 3,000 experienced troops with him. This immediate influx of proven leadership and forces allows the Tang command to delegate the emotional decision.
And Li Jing provides that necessary, cold-hearted counsel. He advises the prince against wasting his time and resources on a mere beast like Zhu Can. He reminds the prince of the urgent military reality. Bingzhou and Huizhou in the north are in imminent danger from Lu Wuzhou. That is the main strategic objective. Personal revenge has to wait.
And that ability, the ability to prioritize the main threat over personal rage, that's the mark of high-level leadership. The solution was simple and efficient. Li Jing and Zhang Shangxiang will lead 10,000 elite troops to suppress Zhu Can instead. The dirty work gets delegated.
So this creates a new, revised grand strategy that actually ends up accelerating the original plan. First, the Prince of Qin proceeds north immediately to deal with the major threat, Lu Wuzhou. Second, Li Jing is appointed Grand General for the suppression of Chu, and he goes and crushes the cannibal king.
And here's the key strategic move. After eliminating Zhu Can, Li Jing is ordered to move his forces immediately to the Hanggu border in Henan to rendezvous with the Prince of Qin.
And that meeting point sets up the final, inevitable phase, combining their forces to finally defeat Wang Shichong. The very enemy the original fake you destroys glow strategy was designed to weaken in the first place. Meanwhile, and forget the Disney version, we are specifically zeroing in on the incredibly detailed circumstances that launched one of history's most iconic figures, Mulan.
Our sources today give us a truly unique and granular look at her origins. We get the family's specific name, the father's military status,
Right.
Mulan's careful intellectual and physical preparation, and I think, most importantly, the complex, immediate justification she needed for her extraordinary choice.
These are the details that are almost always ignored. They get smoothed over in the popular retellings.
Always.
So the mission for you, the listener, is to understand not just that Mulan replaced her father, but the specific literary logic, the social context, and the really bitter immediate consequences presented within this specific tradition.
We're digging into the bureaucratic crisis and, I guess, the personal calculation that had to happen before any of the heroism could even begin.
And it all starts with this immense driving force. There's an existential threat, isn't there? The story opens with a massive military mobilization.
It's overwhelming. The region is facing a severe geopolitical crisis.
So tell us about that crisis. This isn't just a minor skirmish. It's a full-scale invasion.
That's right. The threat is coming from the north. A very powerful warlord named Liu Wuzu has managed to secure this crucial, very dangerous alliance with the Western Turkic Kazakh Khan.
And the text calls him Hisanaki Han.
Yes. And just to put this in context for you, this Kagan is the brother and successor of the formidable Shibi Khan.
So this is not just a raiding party.
No. This is a highly capable and organized foreign power, the Turks, allied with a strong internal Chinese rebel, Liu Wuzu. It creates a situation where the regime they serve, the Tubaway, is hemorrhaging territory and manpower.
So this alliance is the catalyst. It demands an instant call-up of every able-bodied man on the military rolls.
And that external pressure is what brings the crisis right to Mulan's doorstep.
Okay, so let's unpack the details from the sources, starting with the Hua family itself, because they're far more specific and kind of established than you might think.
The specifics matter so much here. We learn her full surname is Hua, her father's name is Huahu, with the courtesy name Chengzi. They're noted as being from the Hebei region.
Which, geographically, places them right in the zone of immediate danger.
Exactly. And crucially, the father is not just some generic veteran. He has a concrete military title that makes his conscription completely unavoidable.
What was it?
He was a Qinfuzang, a 1,000-man commander, and he was part of the permanent military registry, the Junji.
Ah, the Jinji. That's the key. So it means he isn't just being drafted. He has a standing, lifelong obligation.
Yes. His name is literally on the required list. The warrant is unavoidable because it's tied to his identity, his rank, everything.
But hold on. If he was a 1,000-man commander, why is the family portrayed as so poor, so destitute that they can't even afford a bribe later on?
That's a great question, and it's absolutely a subtle critique within the novel.
I thought so.
It highlights the collapse of the central government's infrastructure. Huahu might hold a rank, but in a chaotic, collapsing regime, that rank doesn't guarantee wealth. It only guarantees obligation.
What a bitter irony. The state demands his service but offers no financial buffer.
None at all.
The text also gives Mulan this wonderful, almost mythical origin story about her name, doesn't it?
It does. It's a beautiful literary touch. Her parents had been cultivating a rare, exotic Mulan tree for years, but it just refused to bloom.
And then
The moment Mulan was born, the tree suddenly burst into these thick, beautiful flowers. So they named her Mulan. It instantly establishes her as, a singular, fated person.
And she's not an only child.
No, she has a younger sister, Yulan, who is 4 years younger, and a baby brother, Tianlang. He's still an infant.
Which just ramps up the stakes. If the father dies, the family lineage is immediately endangered.
Now let's look at Mulan herself. At age 17, her physical description is really important for the plot. The text says she has clear eyebrows, bright eyes, a loud voice, and importantly, it explicitly notes that she had physically grown to resemble a man.
So that natural physical ambiguity is the foundation for her being able to pull this off later.
Exactly, and it feeds directly into her upbringing. Since her parents didn't have a son at first, her father basically trained her as if she were one. He taught her archery and shooting.
And what she avoided is just as important.
Yes, she actively avoided what the text calls needlework, or nianzhen nongxian. Instead, she preferred literacy, sheji gazir, and spent her time studying military strategy, jianju bingfa.
So this decision she makes is much more informed than impulsive. She has the physical training and the intellectual curiosity.
It's a potent combination, and it was sort of uniquely possible in the North. While society limited women's work, Skills with a bow and horse were surprisingly common up there.
So she was able to practice.
Constantly. She rode frequently in the wilderness, which gave her the physical conditioning for the life of a soldier.
But all this preparation suddenly hits a wall. Her father, Wahoo, comes home.
And he's lamenting. The recruitment effort is underway, he's on the registry, and he sees no way out.
And his wife, Yuan Shi, asks the obvious question. Can't we just pay for an exemption? Bribe someone?
He dismisses it instantly, and his reason reveals the total chaos of the regime. He says too many people are already buying exemptions.
So the system is flooded.
It's flooded. So it's fiscally impossible for him. He has no money, and it's administratively impossible for the regime to accept any more bribes. They need bodies now.
And then the window just slams shut.
Completely. The sources say the military warrants arrived like snowflakes. They demand Wahoo report immediately. Provisions were issued, and they were ordered to leave within a crushing 3-day window.
Just sorrow for the whole family.
Pure sorrow. That 3-day window is just a sign of extreme desperation.
Which brings us to Mulan's internal reaction. And she doesn't just act on pure emotion. She actually uses history and critical thinking to give her desperate act some moral weight.
This is really the centerpiece of her characterization in this novel. She considers the cold, hard facts. Her father is old, there's no elder brother. If he dies out there, his bones might never even return home.
And that, for this culture, is the ultimate filial failure, the ultimate disaster for the family line, an ancestor without a proper tomb.
Exactly. Her primary fear isn't just his physical loss, it's the spiritual and familial obliteration that would follow. She is trying to ensure the continuity of the Hua line.
And to justify this, she looks for historical precedent. She's searching for evidence that what she's about to do isn't just crazy, but that it's part of a tradition.
And she finds it. She cites Sun Wuzi, who we know as Sun Tzu. He famously trained female soldiers during the wars between Wu and Yu. This is a scholarly reference.
She's read the classics.
She has. And she doesn't stop there. She finds specific named examples. The embroidered banner woman general and the brocade umbrella madam, both successful female military figures from the early Sui dynasty.
So in her mind, she's joining a lineage of women warriors. She's not forging a new path entirely on her own.
That's her logic. And it leads her to this revolutionary conclusion about gender. She determines that loyalty and filial piety are not exclusive to men, not just to those who wear headbands or Deitushin.
And she couples this with incredible self-confidence, even
Boastful.
boastful almost. She vows to surpass those useless men, Nongbao Nancy.
That is such a powerful statement. It's a moral judgment on a failed patriarchy. Her core mantra becomes, those with resolve will succeed. So she decides, I will disguise myself. I'll substitute for my father. And she thinks if she's clever, she won't be exposed and she can be back in a year or two.
She definitely underestimates the time, but not her own capability.
Which brings us right to the logistics of the deception. It moves from justification straight to execution, and this part is full of brilliant practical details.
First, she checks the gear, tries on her father's helmet, his armor, but the real constant challenge for a woman trying to do this was always the gait, how she moved her body.
This is such a vital moment in the text. It reveals the most culturally significant part of the disguise. Her feet. Yes. She notes, luckily, that her golden lotuses, a reference maybe to foot binding, but here it just implies small feet. We're not too small.
What a detail, a miracle of natural anatomy that saves her plan. If her feet had been bound or even just extremely small, the whole thing would have been impossible.
But she's athletic, unconfined, and she takes active measures. She implements this brilliant practical fix. She wraps foot straps inside her boots.
Why?
To ensure her walk lacked any telltale swaying, or what the text calls a delicate posture, the Nyonajitai, she is literally engineering a masculine walk.
That shows incredible forethought. She's not just putting on clothes, she's analyzing and correcting the social signals her body gives off.
And after all that effort, she looks at her reflection in a water jar, sighs, and concludes she could pass not just as a commander, but as a general.
She's convinced herself.
Yeah.
Which is the final step before she has to face her family.
And their reaction is predictable terror. They find her in the armor and immediately call her proposition crazy.
And the father's just devastated.
He's crying. And his response reveals so much. He says he regrets that she's a daughter, because if she were a son, she could have gone off and sought glory and honor for the family legitimately.
He sees her potential, but he's trapped by convention. But Mulan is firm. She turns his regret into her rationale.
She tells them not to worry. She says lots of ladies and princesses escape in disguise during times of chaos. Her argument is that her sacrifice will save their lives and secure her younger siblings' future.
And she adds a very stern, calculated warning.
She does. She urges them to let her leave quietly immediately so the neighbors and soldiers don't find out she's a woman and bring shame on the family. She's protecting their reputation as much as their lives.
The moment of departure is stark. The next morning, fellow soldiers arrive, calling for Wahoo.
And Mulan, fully disguised, just rushes out and announces she's taking his place.
And the deception works. Instantly.
Instantly. The soldiers are completely fooled. They actually praise Wahoo for having such a great son.
The irony is just palpable. They're praising the success of the very deception she had to perform.
And Wahoo can only agree, tearfully. Mulan bows to her parents, grabs her gear, and leaves. Swiftly.
And her father tries to escort her.
He does, desperate for one last moment. But Mulan, sternly and harshly, the text says Yan Chilis, compels him to turn back.
She has to. She refuses the lingering farewell to preserve the disguise. She has to be a soldier now. It's a harsh, clinical exit.
All designed to protect the plan.
It's a successful deception, a successful departure. But this is where the story pivots so dramatically. This heroism comes with a devastating, immediate cost to the very family she tried to save.
This is maybe the most profound insight in this entire version of the story. Immediately, the external reaction is just poisonous. Neighbors criticize the parents for sending their big daughter down such a dangerous path,
implying they valued their own lives over hers.
But the communal gossip is so much worse. The sources say the gossiping women suggested the parents were just letting her go to the army to, quote, pick a suitable man to be happy with.
Oh, wow. Think about the weight of that slander. She performs the ultimate act of filial piety, and the community twists it into a narrative of shame, suggesting she was being frivolous.
A severe social indictment on the family's reputation.
And the internal consequences are just as bad. The sacrifice she made to save her father from the battlefield, it ends up killing him anyway.
Precisely. Wahoo was consumed by constant worry. Anxiety over his daughter's life, the community scorn, the strain of her absence. He falls ill within a year of her departure and passes away.
A year?
The text uses the phrase, Woohoo eyes a lamentation of profound sorrow.
So she saved him from battle, only for the psychological and social pressure to kill him inside of 12 months. A tragic irony built right into the story.
And that seals the family's fate. The mother, Yuan Shi, was left struggling to survive while raising two young children with no support.
What happens to her?
The text notes that due to the total collapse of the household, she was eventually forced to remarry a man named Wei in the same village.
Okay, let's shift scenes. Let baby pass.
A critical spot. Tang forces had already taken back, 5 or 6 counties? The pressure was on.
Immense pressure. But the real story, as you said, boils down to two men, Qin Shubao, fighting for the Tang, and Yu Qigong, who was the absolute best warrior on Lu Wuzu's side.
And they just could not beat each other. It was this perfect stalemate.
A stalemate that, as it turns out, creates a massive vulnerability for Lu Wuzar.
Yeah.
So let's unpack that. They'd already fought, 4 or 5 times?
Yeah, and always a draw. But the test time was different. The political tension was just through the roof. Lu Wuzha's army was taking hits, and his other big commander, Song Jinggang, was getting really suspicious of Yu Qigong.
Suspicious how?
Well, because Yu Qigong couldn't get a clear win, Song Jinggang started suggesting he had, private motives, basically hinting that he was colluding with the enemy or at least not trying his best.
Wow, that is a career killer of a charge. You can survive a defeat, but not the suspicion of disloyalty.
Exactly. So Yu Qigong is essentially forced back onto the battlefield to prove himself. And what happens?
Let me guess. Another draw.
Another 100+ rounds of fighting, and still a draw. The sun's going down, Qin Wang is getting worried, and signals for Qin Shubao to retreat.
But Qin Shubao is just running on pure adrenaline at this point.
Yeah.
He ignores it. He actually tells his men to light torches, basically signaling for a night battle.
And Yu Qigong sees this and immediately responds in kind. He lights his own fires until the whole field is, and the source says this, bright as day. He just roars back, I am ready.
It's this incredible mutual obsession.
It is. They fight another 100 rounds, and they are still completely inseparable.
And this is where the story just goes off the rails into legend. Yu Qigong gets frustrated with just, swinging weapons.
Yeah.
And suggests this thing called the Bingli Fnei, a test of strength.
Right. And his first idea, which is what you often see in the later stories, was to just treat blows. You hit me with your mace, I'll hit you with my whip.
Which is insane.
Totally. And Qin Shi Bao's response here is just a perfect definition of the warrior code of honor. He shuts it down immediately.
What does he say?
He says their bodies were gifts from their parents. They're sacred. Striking each other's flesh like that is only for, like, dead things, animals, iron cauldrons, piles of dirt. He says, if we are to die, let it be in battle, honorably.
So no human punching bags. They pivot to something else.
They pivot to breaking stones. And this is where our source does something fascinating. The author literally steps in to correct the record.
A little meta-commentary.
Yeah, the text says, that the later stories about them hitting each other are false. It says, the real event was this test of strength against stones. It's an author trying to preserve historical accuracy.
And these weren't just any stones. They were huge, right?
Yeah. The estimate is 1 to 2,000 jin. A jin is about 1.3 pounds, so we're talking about stones that weighed well over a ton.
And the weapons were just as monstrous.
Yu Qigong's whip was over 120 jin. Just a massive iron bar, basically. Qin Shi Bao had 2 maces, 64 jin each, and they swapped weapons for the test.
Okay, so Yu Qigong gets the maces, which are actually a bit lighter than his whip.
Right. He steps up. He strikes the stone 3 times. The first 2 just make a dent, maybe 2 or 3 inches deep.
Right.
But on the third strike, he puts everything into it, and he splits the stone in half.
A huge display of power. Now it's Qin Shi Bao's turn. All the pressure's on him, and he has the heavier single whip.
And he does something different. He prays to heaven first. He asks for the mandate of the Tang Emperor to guide his hand.
A little divine intervention.
Maybe. He strikes the stone. The first blow leaves a huge mark. The second blow splits it completely to the base.
2 strikes. He wins.
Well, that's what he says. Qin Shi Bao claims victory, but Yu Qigong immediately argues that the weapons were different weights. They're about to go at it again when Qin Wang finally steps in.
He'd been watching this whole time.
The whole time. He sends out soldiers with a jar of wine and a plate of beef, basically saying, all right, you two, that's enough, have a snack.
And how does Yu Qigong respond to that?
He's so stubborn, he refuses the food, insists on fighting more, but the Tang army sounds the final retreat and the contest is over.
But that moment, that bizarre, honorable, and weirdly friendly contest ends up being his undoing.
It was the fatal error, because scouts were watching everything.
And they report back to Song Jing, the suspicious commander.
Who now has all the proof he needs. He hears about the duel, the night battle, the sharing of food, or at least the offer of it.
So he sees fraternization, not honor.
He sees collusion and negligence. He accuses Yu Qigong of leaking military secrets and demands his execution.
And Lu Wusu, the warlord, actually agrees.
Immediately. He's panicking from the Tang advance. He needs to look strong. He orders the death sentence. It takes a bunch of other generals begging to get his life spared.
So he's not executed, but he's finished.
Oh, completely. He's demoted on the spot, stripped of his command, and sent way to the rear to a place called Jiju to guard the army's grain supplies.
He goes from their greatest warrior to a glorified warehouse guard.
It's a self-inflicted wound. They just took their best player off the field and put him in charge of their single biggest vulnerability.
So what was the reaction on the Tang side? What did their commander, Su Maogong, think when he heard this news?
He was just thrilled. Unmitigated glee. He knew Lu Wusu had just handed them the entire campaign on a silver platter.
Because their biggest obstacle was now out of the way, and their lifeline was exposed.
Exactly. Xu Maogong knew precisely where to strike next.
And this is where the whole conflict shifts. It stops being about honor and duels, and it becomes a war of pure logistics.
Right, because while this is happening, the Tang advance is picking up speed. A general named Zhun Shang defects and just hands Baibi Pass over to Qin Wang.
That causes a rout, doesn't it?
A total rout. Lu Wusu's army is decimated, loses something like 8 out of 10 men. He's forced to retreat north, and he desperately needs that supply depot at Jipku to survive.
And Zhou Maogong pounces. He sends a special force straight for Jiexia.
A surgical strike. He sends 2 generals, Louis Shixin and Wang Bu, and their target is not Yu Qigong, but what he's guarding.
And the numbers here are staggering. What was he protecting?
He was guarding 3,000 shik of grain. A shik it's a huge amount. We're talking about nearly 500,000 pounds of food, plus over 10,000 bundles of hay for the horses.
That's not a supply depot. That's the entire operational capacity of his army. If that goes, they starve.
Precisely. And the strategy they use to destroy it is just brilliant because it preys directly on Yu Qigong's character.
So Wang Bu's unit rides up and just loudly announces they're there to take the grain. Why not be subtle?
Because it's a lure. It's psychological warfare. Yu Qigong is humiliated. He's burning with shame. He needs to prove he's still a loyal warrior dedicated to his post. Hearing the enemy openly challenge his duty, he couldn't stand it.
He took the bait.
Hook, line, and sinker. He gets enraged and chases Wang Bu for, the sources say, 50 or 60 rounds of combat, with Wang Bu just pretending to flee, leading him farther and farther away.
And while Yu Qigong is a few miles away defending his honor.
Louis Shixin arrives at the depot completely unopposed.
And then the inevitable.
A massive fire, everything, the grain, the hay, all of it burned to ash. The logistical spine of Lu Wuzu's army was just gone.
So when Yu Qigong sees the smoke, he knows it's over.
He rushes back, fights his way into the city of Jiexi, but it's too late. Qin Wang and the main Tang army arrive and surround him. He's trapped with no food and no hope of rescue.
So now, finally, they try to negotiate. Qin Wang sends the newly defected general Sun Yang to talk to him.
And Yu Qigong, even now, is all about his code. He gives one condition for surrender.
What is it?
He says he will only surrender if his lord, Lu Wuzu, is confirmed dead. Otherwise, he'll fight to the death.
Which is a problem for Qin Wang. He doesn't want a long, bloody siege. But this is where that other piece of the puzzle, General Lu Shirang's secret mission, comes into play.
Yes, Lu Shirang had been sent on this incredibly high-risk diplomatic mission. Lu Wuzu had been trying to get help from a powerful northern leader, the Hesekaren.
And Lu Shirang's job was to stop that alliance.
Stop it, and if possible, flip it. He went loaded with gold and jewels, but also with some very good intelligence.
That was the angle.
He knew the Kagan was already angry with Lu Zu. In previous campaigns, Lu Wuzu had taken all the best loot silks, women, everything for himself, and left the Kagan's troops to be the vulnerable rear guard.
He was a bad ally.
A greedy, unreliable ally, so Lu Shirang just pours fuel on that fire.
So when Lu Wuzu and Song Jingyang, defeated and starving, finally flee to the Kagan's camp looking for help,
the Kagan sees an opportunity, not for an alliance, but for revenge and profit. The source says he used a stratagem, basically a trick, and had them both killed.
Wow.
So Lu Shirang returns to the Tang camp not with the treaty, but with 2 severed heads.
The heads of Lu Wuzu and Song Jingyang, the perfect, if gruesome, answer to Yu Qigong's demand.
Qin Wang knows it immediately. He sends the heads over the wall to Yu Qigong in Jixiu.
And Yu Qigong's reaction, it just tells you everything.
It does. He recognizes his former lord and his accuser, Song Jingyang. And the sources say he wailed loudly, he performed a great ritual sacrifice, and then buried the 2 heads together in a coffin.
An act of final loyalty.
A final dramatic act of loyalty. And only after doing that does he open the city gates and surrender. His condition was met. His honor was satisfied.
An incredible end to the campaign.
Right.
And Qin Wang treats him well, right?
He treats him as a guest, immediately makes him a general. He recognized Yu Qigong's character. And Lu Shirang, the diplomat who won the war, gets a huge promotion.
So when you look back, the entire collapse of Lu Wuzu's regime was this chain reaction. It starts with a bizarre stone-breaking contest, which leads to a political demotion, creating a tactical vulnerability.
Which is then perfectly exploited, forcing the warlord to flee right into the arms of a vengeful third party that had been set up by brilliant diplomacy.